All right. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to us today. Kyle, let's start off with an easy one. What's something about you that most people don't know?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I think one thing that I've talked about people in the Zoom era. I think people's height is always a common theme, and like how tall is that person? I can't tell. And so when I tell people that at my baseball games growing up, my dad and my uncle would come to the games, and they're both 6'8", so they're pretty tall. And then my grandfather was actually 6'10".
Wow.
So even though I'm fairly tall, in my family, I'm actually considered short. So that's something that most people don't know, and especially over the last 15 to 18 months.
Holy cow. How tall are you exactly?
I'm 6'4".
6'4".
So
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
You were a sales manager at Dropbox at some point, and you grew your team from 3 people to 30 people in the first year. And then you repeated that when you became head of sales, growing from 3 people to about 80 plus people. What's the main lesson you learned from those 2 super growth periods in your life?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I joined as the third sales hire at Dropbox. The company was 50 employees, and so it was very early days, and it was my first tech experience. So we were opening up a sales and operations hub in the U.S., and it was either going to be in Brooklyn or Austin, Texas. And it turned out to be in Austin, Texas. We got there, and some of the first things that we realized were that in San Francisco, Dropbox is becoming more and more of a household name. As we just started taking over the world of cloud storage. But in San Francisco, people knew that there was all these types of jobs, and we had a really great hiring profile, and the talent brand was so high that hiring was honestly quite easy. I mean, I think there was a really high caliber of people that they were looking for, and so that was one thing. But like, people were interested and people were interviewing. When we got to Austin, it's just such a different scene. And back in 2013, the tech scene was not as prevalent as it is today in Austin. And so people didn't really think that there was sales jobs, marketing jobs, support jobs. They thought if you were to work at Dropbox, you must be a software engineer. And so I think some of the biggest learnings in growing that team, I think we actually grew it from the 3 of us to 100 plus when I left almost 2 years later, across sales, support, and operations, sales being about 50 or 60 people. What we learned is we had to just start building our own talent brand in Austin because it just didn't exist. And we had to tell people that the business is on this amazing trajectory. There's all these really cool things that are coming down the line. And there's so many more roles outside of engineering and product management and all the things that people think about when you're building, a tech company. So that was a big challenge, but also I think some of the most fun parts that we had was doing these big meetups, telling those stories, and really starting to cultivate a unique flavor of talent brand in the Austin market.
And speaking of locations, so at one point at Dropbox, you were managing account executives in San Francisco and New York. So what are some of the things you observed about how sales and business is done on both coasts?
It was so different. In San Francisco, it's the headquarters. You're working alongside engineering and product. When you get out to Texas, people weren't following the company. They weren't keeping up with it. So I think we had to kind of go back to those first principles on like, what is Dropbox? What is the value of collaboration, cloud storage, all that good stuff. And then New York was fun. It was great. I'd go out to the New York City office, and there was such a fresh new energy. At the time, we had probably five salespeople in the office when I started working out there. When I left, it was probably closer to 20. And we would go up and down in the subway and go meet customers, and that kind of that proximity to some of the most large enterprise customers and even commercial sized companies that you can meet with. It's just so fun and invigorating. I think the culture is way more direct, which is nice. You cut down the number of meetings, where you stand, and it has different challenges. Yep, exactly. And they prefer it. They say, hey, get on the subway, come meet us, And so I think there's something really refreshing about that.
When you think about your current role at Figma as the head of sales, what do you spend most of your time doing?
Early days, there's a little bit of everything and a lot of hiring. So I think that's how we've kind of grown the team to nobody customer facing to almost 80 people today globally. And my team being a little bit over 55 people at this time.
That's that's a fantastic
Yeah,
achievement.
yeah, it's a lot of growth. It's been fast, but how do I spend my time today? There's still a lot of recruiting,
Mhm.
and so I think that I do spend time with some of our largest customers, and
Mhm.
you always want to keep a close pulse on that and the market and how your team is selling and supporting and enabling your customers. But what I really sell the most is working at Figma, telling my story, telling the growth strategy, telling what I see on the horizon in terms of opportunity for the business, and trying to align the right people that have a diverse set of skills and backgrounds and can bring their experience, their perspective, their skill set to the company at this stage. And so I think we're no longer a startup. I think depending on how you phrase it, we're in that scale up phase, and so we're now a $10 billion company on paper, and those are big shoes to fill. And so we're in this phase where we need to bring people that can help evolve our culture in a healthy way, but also help lead the business through this next chapter, which is going to be a challenging period just in terms of growth and expectations.
And speaking of sales, what are some of the friction points that you feel are affecting most sales teams today?
So if you thrive and get joy and balance your life out by being around others,
Mm.
that doesn't happen over Zoom. And you can trick yourself that it does, but it doesn't really fulfill that need. So I think that although remote's been amazing, and I'm excited to see what it looks like in a hybrid environment,
Mhm.
I think that many sales teams and leadership teams and sales orgs at large
Mm.
are just deficient of that energy.
What are three key metrics that you use to judge the performance of a sales team?
Those are the three big things: win rates, pipeline, and then just deal progression across sales stages.
And speaking of sales performance, what's one experiment you've run with your team lately that you were especially proud of? And I mean, this could be related to sales workflow, training, hiring, etc. Doesn't matter if it failed or succeeded.
One thing actually that has been very top of mind for me and
Mm.
the team and my leadership team has actually been around feedback.
Mm.
And so we have been working a ton on just making sure that we've created and are supporting and talking every single day about an open feedback culture. You can't assume because you have an open culture and that you feel that feedback is open to give, especially upward feedback to your managers, to me, your boss's boss and boss's boss's boss and the executive team. You have to go and kind of tell people that those channels exist and put in the work to make sure that people know you want to hear that feedback and you're acting on that feedback. And if you're not acting on that feedback, why? And so we've done a number of things where we have these kind of roundtable sessions with myself and all of the people in the IC sales teams working together without their managers, sharing feedback. What are they working on? What can we do better? I've put a monthly feedback block on my calendar so people can grab time and share their thoughts, whether they want to come in a group, they want to come individually. So that's been a lot of learning and a lot of growth area for me as a leader. But the avenue of like opening up feedback has just been tremendous.
And then what are some of the trends in sales that companies should be aware of, in your opinion?
I think a lot of people are talking about like, how do you build that sales motion alongside product-led growth, which is very kind of like top of mind. So I think, how do you figure out that perfect balance? And I mean, even for Figma, we've gotten really far to get to this point, but how do we find that balance in terms of bottoms up product-led growth and all of these users, all this interesting insights and data, and marry that with the top-down sales experience and trying to see how do we create a customer experience where we can learn, hopefully kind of sell and understand the market a little bit more, but also leverage all this interesting data that we have. And so I think that I think that we've done a number of things right, and there's a number of things that could have been better, and things that we're trying to tweak and understand as we go to this next stage of growth. We're now going from a one product company to a two product company with FigJam, our whiteboarding tool. And so, I think product-led growth seems to be all the rage in the SaaS world right now. And I think figuring out what your go-to-market motion within your company, your customer, your persona type that you want to sell to, is a topic and trend that I'm having a lot of conversations about.
At Momentum, we're fanatics about tooling. What's the sales stack like at Figma at the moment?
So we use Dooley for note taking and updating Salesforce fields. That's been really great for us. We're outreach customers for email sequences and templates of that nature. We use Chorus for customer video call recording, which is really helpful also for sharing insights with product and other teams internally. Salesforce, of course. We use a company called Census that actually pipes all of the data into Salesforce so that we can see insights in terms of, and we refresh that data every couple hours, number of users, signups, licenses, certain actions taken. Once they become customers on the account management side, we actually auto create opportunities in Salesforce and helps us streamline and kind of drive our business off of like real data, and then have the sales team override that based on conversations with the customer. And we're also starting to pilot a new software called Accord, which we use to align mutual plans with customers to get on the same page and create, tasks for who needs to do what, deadlines, and things that just help us navigate that kind of buyer journey process with our customers, with their support and with their insights on how to do that. And that's actually gone really, really well, and we're seeing a lot of great feedback from that.
Which necessary team roles would you add to a deal desk?
Today, we have a deal desk that basically is a Google Groups email. And so we ask reps to fill out a template deal desk that we created. And we basically have representatives from legal, from finance, from the accounting side, and on the executive team. Because I think that at our level and scale, like there's some things that about Figma that aren't very standard in terms of like, we do not discount our products. So that removes a major lever for most sales people and sales leadership teams. And so with doing that, it's been really helpful to even have like our CEO on our deal desk so we can see what kind of deals we're proposing to do. I think we're very regimented and kind of principled in terms of the types of deals that we do and where we give levers and where we don't. But we can also see like, how are we thinking about it? How are we getting creative? Because when you take out the no discounting lever, what you bring to the deal desk, looks and feels a little bit different. So it's been fun to kind of collaborate and in a way help educate the executive team on how the sales team's thinking about pricing, packaging, commercial terms, things of that nature.
So, I mean, you've led sales in a couple of roles over your career. When you're hiring, what's one trait or achievement in a candidate that would make you instantly swipe right on them? And swipe right, I mean, select them.
Swipe right, I like that. I missed the app dating world, so I never got to swipe right. But
you didn't miss anything at all. I promise you.
I think there's not any one thing. I think that we're always looking for people that bring diverse set of skills, backgrounds. I think aptitude in terms of learning technical products, and aptitude doesn't mean that you've been doing it for the last 5-10 years. It means that you have the curiosity to figure it out. And I think when we get on with calls with people, the one thing that I usually want to know before you even kind of suss that out is like, how are they thinking about their career? What is there this thoughtful path on going from one job to the next, committing to that job, the next, or is their career kind of taking them, by the reins in a way? And so you'll see a number of people, and especially in COVID, I'm ultra understanding. If you've job jumped every year and a half and you've got a good story for it, that's great. But I think, you look at people that have moved on from a company every 15 months, every 18 months, and you don't really start to like sink in and add value until probably about 6 months into a company. And so once you start feeling like you've got your feet under you, to leave beyond a year from that, like you're just getting started. So I think that I like to hear how people think about their career, if they're intentional, if they're thoughtful, and if they have some kind of like larger plan that they're working towards.
Not a lot of people taking up breaks in their careers, but I mean, you took some time off to go on a sabbatical after you left Dropbox. Tell us about that time in your life. What did you do? Where'd you go? Who'd you meet? And what'd you learn?
My wife and I had recently gotten married, and we knew we wanted to do some open-ended travel before hopefully having children at some point. And I had done that open-ended travel trip that I talked about at the beginning of this, where I went to India, Southeast Asia, and China. And we wanted to have that experience together as a couple and as newlyweds. And so we planned on taking 12 months. We had kind of looked into doing some work exchange programs. So if you know of WWOOFing, the World Federation of Organic Farming, and there's a bunch of different websites that you can now go and do this stuff. And so you can basically get free room and board for doing manual labor, all different kinds of things, learning different skill sets. And for us, kind of getting away from the screen a little bit. I love what I do, but I think it's healthy as a human being to take a step back and, even though I say this in a very positive way, get off the rat race, for just a small bit in time.
What is your best productivity tip at the moment?
Being intentional about what your one thing is. What is the one thing that you will not settle for being a failure, being mediocre? What has to be a success? And so I think that, and there could be cascading things that are, of course, top priorities. Like in my world, there's like 10 things floating around my brain that are top priorities and need to get done, ASAP or yesterday. But I think thinking through that framework, slowing down and just focusing on the one thing that I will say about startups and hyper growth and all that comes with it is that you got to be okay knowing that you can't do it all. It's just not feasible. You got to be able to say, this is deprioritized because we have too few people, too few resources, and that's okay. And we can live with that because we're going to prioritize this and we're going to make sure that we get this done. And we've collectively agreed that this is the most important thing for the team, for the business at this time. So I think that's been really good for me. It's time is the thing we're all short on. And so by able to kind of like think through this framework of the one thing, it's been able to make me feel okay with what I can't do and not lose sleep over it, but really double down and be successful in the one thing that I'm trying to get right.
If you were not working in sales, what would you be doing instead professionally?
Oh, that's a great question. Of course I love travel. I love like other cultures. I'm a bad but lifelong surfer since I was 5. I could probably see myself running some kind of in another country, a little bit more tropical, kind of B2B of sorts, where I'm that person who's welcoming people into this world and hosting them, and there's adventure and there's young families and there's people coming and you're making relationships along the way. I think if I get a second career, or if I wasn't doing this, I could see myself, operating, managing some kind of experience where people were coming into some kind of adventure hotel, adventure hostel. I think I would be pretty good at it and pretty content in the day-to-day.
If you do ever start something like that, please send me the details so I can book my stay at your hotel or venue. And then my last question for you is, if you were starting your career all over again, what would you do differently?
Early on, when you're not in all of the meetings, or at least for myself, I was started out as an IC, got into leadership. I was always so curious what people were talking about the leadership side. What it was about me. I wasn't doing something. I was just so in my head about like I wasn't doing enough or this or that. And it was never about me. I think just like bubble up, think about the bigger picture, think about the mission of the company. And I've always, I think, done a good job in working hard and creating good relationships, not burning bridges, and trying to build a good network and realizing that that's going to pay dividends. But what I've told people, and I've used this analogy of like taking care of a bonsai tree. It's like, I would have been so intentional about the reputation I was building, the relationships I was building at Dropbox. And I did, I invested a ton. I built really great relationships, and that network helped me get the job at Figma and has helped unlock so many things for me to this day. Has absolutely changed my life. But I would tell people that focus on the bigger picture, focus on learning, focusing on growing, the rest of it, if you do all those things, it will sort itself out. And at the same time, cultivate a really strong brand, build a great network, don't burn any bridges, and really just realize that this world that we work in the tech industry is much smaller than it seems. And you will see your colleagues, you will see your partners, you will see your bosses, the people that you manage at those next companies.
You'll see people again, so don't piss anyone off. I like that advice.
Exactly.
I like that advice. Thank you so much, Kyle, for making the time to speak to us today. I'll catch you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mo.
Cheers.